why are these orphans rejoicing? Because gifts to the Dorms for Orphanages Fund of Heaven's Family have provided them with new homes. Okay, back into this amazing story that is found in Matthew chapter 9, but we're looking at it in Luke's gospel because it's got more detail. Jesus is in his hometown of Capernaum. The Pharisees and teachers of the law have all gathered there because Jesus, just shortly before this, has performed one of the three messianic miracles that it is commonly believed amongst the rabbis and teachers of that time could only be performed by the Messiah. That was the cleansing of a leper. And that's why Jesus, in Luke chapter 5 and verse number 14, after he cleansed that leper, he said, "Don't tell anyone." Actually, reading verbatim, he ordered him to tell no one, but, quote, "Go and show yourself to the priest and make an offering for your cleansing, just as Moses commanded," I'll get this, "as a testimony to them." That is, there's more to this than just, I want them to find out that a leper was cleansed. No, I want them for the first time in Jewish history, since the giving of the law of Moses hundreds and hundreds of years ago, to actually have to walk through Leviticus 13 and 14, the law of what to do when a leper is cleansed, and which all of the teachers and all of the rabbis believe that when somebody comes on the scene and does that, that's the Messiah. And so that explains, in this case, why Jesus said, "Don't tell anyone." It wasn't because he didn't want it known. He wanted to speed line everybody knowing about it. Send this guy to the priest down in Jerusalem for the first time in hundreds of years, They have to apply Leviticus 13, 14. That'll set in motion a inquiry that will be nationwide because a notable miracle, a messianic miracle has been done. All of the leaders and teachers in the synagogues and so forth then ultimately gathered in Capernaum to watch Jesus, to make an evaluation and to investigate, is this the Messiah? And that sets the stage now for Luke chapter 5. Now, isn't this interesting what happens in verse number 18 of Luke 5? "And some men were carrying on a bed a man who was paralyzed. And they were trying to bring him in and to set him down in front of him, but not finding any way to bring him in because of the crowd." Stop. Who is the crowd? Is it a regular bunch of people from the local Capernaum people? The crowd is Pharisees and teachers of the law who have gathered and filled up that house from all over Israel. So that also may explain why they couldn't get away in. Not just because of the fact the house was stuffed, because the house was stuffed with people who didn't want sick people getting to Jesus. I mean, you think about it. Think about it just for a moment. Take an average crowd in Jesus' day. And, here comes the sick. And Jesus is well known as a healer. Well, why wouldn't the crowd part? Why wouldn't people who are on the outside looking in say, "Hey, there's a paralyzed man who wants to be healed. Could we, open the way for him to get in there," and so forth? You just think. I mean, this is not, I can't say this with absolute certainty, but you just think there'd be some mercy shown to this guy, and that they would have said, "Oh, we'll make allowance. Let's let this guy in." No, this is not a regular crowd. This is a crowd of the most religious, bigoted people who, we'll see soon, right from the start, they had some prejudice against Jesus. So they didn't find any way to bring him in. And because of the crowd, verse number 19, they went up on the roof and let him down through the tiles with his stretcher into the middle of the crowd in front of Jesus. All right, this is amazing. Okay, now, first of all, don't imagine, a pitched roof like you might have on your house and these guys walking up there and hanging onto the chimney trying to get their friend, no. Flat roof, first of all. A lot of times in Middle Eastern countries, people, they all have flat roofs for the most part, and they have stairways leading from the exterior of the house up to the roof. People slept there. They dry their vegetables there. They dry their fruits there and so forth. It's a protected place under the sun and so on. But it still is waterproof. Although there's, a lot of dry season, there's in Israel a lot of wet season, and it rains and sometimes it snows in higher elevations and so on. And so you just don't have like a tile roof in the sense that it's not waterproof. No, whatever they had, we usually think of a solid kind of clay sun-baked roof that is just supported by wooden beams, inside or, as a structural support for that clay roof. But it says here that they removed the tiles. I don't know what that involved, but it involved some degree of work, and we have to question if tiles were removed, how much commotion it caused in the house below. Think about that for a second. If you were sitting in any room and someone started, making their way through the roof, forget about what kind of roof it is. It's going to be a showstopper. People are going to stop and look up there and hear the noise and see the movement and so forth. Man, if they're having to bang their way through hardened clay, and dig it, what's been hardened by the sun over years and years, there had to be dust falling, chunks of clay falling in the room and so forth. And there's no record that anybody, tried to stop it or prevent it, or no one said, "What? No, don't need to do that. We'll make a way for you to get here." No record of that. There's no record that Jesus stopped it. And holes don't just start with all of a sudden there's nothing, it's a solid roof, a solid ceiling over everyone's head, and all of a sudden they lift up a tile that's as big as a man. It's tiles, plural, okay? So the hole starts off small. All of a sudden a shaft of light comes in the room. Another one is removed, another shaft of light. At bare minimum, this had to have been a showstopper. And wow, is it ever a setup for Jesus? And is it ever a setup for the teachers of the law and the Pharisees who are all there with their magnifying glasses on the Lord Jesus Christ? What is he going to do? And after he does what he does, what is going to be their reaction? Now, you all know the story. I imagine you, because you've read it many times in the past, and we're not going to have time to finish it this time, but there's still more insight to come that I think is going to be an absolute huge blessing as we look at that paralyzed man, how he was healed, as we look at the 4 friends and how they were involved in his healing, as we look at the Pharisees and their reaction. It is so very, very interesting. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you next time.